Okay, the Legislative Committee meeting for the St. Louis Board of Aldermen dated November 3rd, 2021 shall be called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Krueger. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Muhammad.
Aye. Present.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Martin.
Present.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Present.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Chairman Balmer. President Reed.
Here.
9 present, you have quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tonight is a public hearing. We will be discussing Board Bill 101, the redistricting bill. Go ahead and establish some ground rules. Everyone who has signed up will have an opportunity to speak. We'll have 3 minutes. You will state your name, the 100 block that you live on, and the clock will begin then. If you're representing an organization, you will state your name, the name of the organization. The clock will start then. We're asking that we have very constructive comments from the community and that we all be respectful and we do this decent and in order. With that, we're going to start with the first person signed up to speak. Oh, I must also say, someone has signed up to speak who spoke last night, and we generally go in order. But since you spoke last night, you'll be placed at the end of the speaking for tonight, but we will recognize you again to speak. First person up is Miss Ann Crenshaw. Says she would be calling in by phone. I regret to say that we're not going to do testimony from people on the phone. That was said yesterday. I think I was very clear. I think in the spirit of transparency that people need to see who's actually speaking. And it says Ms. Crenshaw is speaking by phone. So I'm not going to allow that because that was a ground rule that was established. And transparency is the big trendy word that we're using that everyone wants to be in compliance with. And I think it's great that we stay in compliance. We don't know if you're on phone, if that's you or somebody else. So out of fairness, Ms. Crenshaw, if you can get to a smartphone or a computer, I'll be more than happy to come back to you. The next person is Mr. Albert Walton Jr. Mr. Albert Walton Jr. Madam Clerk, do you see Mr. Albert Walton? You're on mute, by the way.
Yes, sir. He was on here. I saw him.
Okay, Mr. Walton, twice. Mr. Walton will come back to you at the end. Madam Clerk, please remind me to come back to Mr. Walton in case I forget. Next person on the list is Miss Ruth Ehresmann, Ehresmann. Miss Ruth Ehresmann, I think. I see you, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity to speak. My name's Ruth Ehresmann.
I'm sorry. There's some housekeeping. I have to swear you in. That's one of the new rules. So do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you. You may proceed. Thanks.
Thanks for this opportunity to speak. My name's Ruth Ehresmann. I live in the 1900 block of Withnell in the 9th Ward. I've lived here for 42 years. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Missouri Jobs with Justice, where I serve as the co-chair of the Workers' Rights Board, along with the Reverend Tommy Pearson. As co-chair of the Workers' Rights Board, I hosted a forum in June 2020 on issues surrounding Amendment 3. That was the legislative proposal developed to overturn the Clean Missouri Citizen Initiative. And one policy that was the focus of the hearing was removing from Missouri's Constitution the requirement to count total population when drawing legislative districts. We have conflicting information about how and when voting age population was used in drawing these ward maps. This speaks to a tremendous lack of transparency and we think a flawed process to involve the community. Given the disparity in the numbers of people in the various wards on the map, it appears that census data alone was not the basis of their design. We want to underscore the importance of not using voting age population as a criteria. During the June hearing, the experts, including CEO and president of the Children's Defense Fund, the Reverend Starsky Wilson, and Yuri Rudensky from the Brennan Center testified about how such a policy would disproportionately affect Black and Brown children. To quote Reverend Wilson, by design, omitting children from the population data disregards changing demographics and paves the way for those elected to neglect the needs of children, especially Black and Brown children, who are the rising population in the state of Missouri, end of quote. While the use of voting age population might be understood in the context of Jefferson City politics, we think it's really alarming to learn that this appears to be part of the process of drawing these ward maps. By omitting children from the initial population criteria and then adding them back in after the fact, if that in fact was what was done, we have districts with wide and likely unconstitutional discrepancies in total.
1 minute.
Yep, there should be a consideration of keeping neighborhoods intact and ensuring that wards encompass neighborhoods with similar needs and interests. But the bottom line is everybody must be counted. If St. Louis City moves forward with a process that uses voting age as a criteria, you're opening a Pandora's box to the manipulation of democracy in Missouri and across the nation. We urge you in the strongest possible terms to pause, consider the long-term ramifications, and to start over. So much more than your next elections are at stake. This is respectfully submitted on behalf of Missouri Jobs with Justice. Thank you.
And thank you so much for your participation. Appreciate it. Next up is Liz Kramer.
Hi, Alderman Boyd.
Hi, Ms. Kramer, do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Great, thank you. My name is Liz Kramer. I live on the 3500 block of Humphrey, and I'm representing myself today. First, I want to thank the committee for the difficult work of putting together a first draft and for accepting public comment. I recognize this is really a historic time of transformation for St. Louis, and for that reason, I really want to encourage us to think outside the boundaries we've previously identified with. My first comment is really about prioritizing keeping neighborhoods together, and that I don't think we should do that. I think it's important to many people to keep their neighborhoods intact within their wards. However, for just as an example, I'm a resident of Tower Grove East, but I live in the spur of the 8th Ward that is part of Tower Grove East. For me, the 8th Ward, which is mostly Shaw, is still the ward I associate with, and Tower Grove East is still my neighborhood. And I think that those two things can both be true. What's important to me is seeing that we're able to have 14 elected representatives that are representing districts that break the historic neighborhood boundaries and create a space that is diverse and representative. And that those representatives that we elect represent not just our ward, but the best interests of the entire city. So I really want to see a way that this process moves forward, that we can still consider keeping neighborhoods intact, but maybe having that as one of our most highest priorities may not be the thing that we want to focus on. Rather, focusing on creating diversity within our wards and breaking down the historic racist barriers, including those that are created within neighborhoods. My second point of concern, which I know came up yesterday about where actually is the border because of the things of the lines and the maps. My concern is actually where is that literal barrier on the ward boundaries. When we think about seeing those ward boundaries running down the center line of major streets, I want to ensure that there's a clear responsibility for those important corridors from an economic development perspective, as well as looking at transportation and safety. The conditions on our major roads are so dangerous to pedestrians and drivers, and without careful coordination and cooperation between the older people, it can be really difficult to complete studies, to make investments, and to improve infrastructure. So I want to see a safer and more walkable St. Louis, and I hope that the board will consider how exactly we do that in this new redistricting. I don't have an answer. The final point I want to make is that as we know, the redistribution of resources in this new system will have to change. And I want to see that being a first priority of the board to think about how we allocate ward capital and think about how we can serve wards that are low density and large, and maybe have had historic disinvestment in the long term. I know that's not the topic of this bill, but it's so critical for us to be successful in the long term. Thank you so much for your time and for hosting this session.
Ms. Kramer, thank you for your input. I feel like I'm being rude when I just butt in. So what I want to try to do is hold up like this yellow, I can barely see it. I'm going to have to take off my background. Okay. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'll hold up like this yellow for one so that I don't interrupt people and maybe cause them to lose their thought. And at 30 seconds, I'll hold up the white. So next is Donna A-G-A-H. Gaa.
My name, you want to swear me in?
I do. Is it Gaa?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Mr. Gaa, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
My name is Donna Gaa. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to provide you with public testimony. I'm here tonight representing the Southampton Neighborhood Association. The position of the association is to oppose only the portion of your redistricting plan that involves Southampton. Right now, Southampton is split across 3 wards, and this has been true for at least 10 years. Southampton dates back to the late 1800s. We've had an organized association operating on behalf of the neighborhood since 1903, making us the oldest organized presence in the southwest section of our city. Our historic neighborhood boundaries are Kings Highway on the east, a road dating back to the early days in our city's history. Our northern boundary is Chippewa, historic Route 66. Our western boundary is Hampton. Our southern boundary is another historic and old road that was renamed to Eichelberger. A quick search of our known history shows our boundaries documented in our charter, easily found online at the Missouri Secretary of State website. Quoting from that charter, its objects are to advance and promote the public interests of the city of St. Louis, and more specifically of that section being bounded on the east by Kings Highway Boulevard, on the south by Eichelberger Avenue, on the west by Hampton Avenue, and on the north by Chippewa Street. Filed and certificate of incorporation were issued on December 4th, 1973. This is 48 years of easily found history establishing our historic boundaries. I'm not sure how far back I need to go, so I hope that's enough. I also looked for an alternative suggestion. If you look at your map, there's a triangle-shaped natural grouping of neighborhoods in this section: Southampton, St. Louis Hills, and Princeton Heights. One edge runs along Route 66 from Kings Highway to the city's western boundary. The second edge is the city's western boundary. The third starts at Chippewa, moves south on Kings Highway to Gravois, and continues to the city boundary. I took a look at the city's 2020 census data, and this 3 neighborhood grouping has a total population of 21,527. There's not much deviation from the city's target of 21,500. Yet we want to place in a natural division at Nottingham, a one-way residential street far from any of our historic boundaries. We object. I am respectfully requesting reconsideration of your initial draft to respect Southampton's historic boundaries and our existence as a vibrant, organized neighborhood since 1903. Please do not continue splitting our neighborhood across wards when I've given you a good alternative backed up with historic data on our neighborhood's boundary lines. Thank you.
And thank you. Appreciate your input. Next up is Pastor Amber Cole. Pastor Amber Cole.
Yes, I affirm that my
Pastor Cole, let me just do my little thingy here. Do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Yes, I think some things need to be looked into, especially letting individuals know the different terminologies as you use.
Pastor Cole, are you representing yourself or an organization?
I'm representing myself.
Okay, so state your address, the 100 block of your address, please, for the record.
2000 block of East Fair.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, sir. I need to know the different terminology of different things. And one of the terminology we need to know is the gerrymandering. And that's the state legislators can manipulate district boundaries to benefit their political parties, or in ours, because we're mostly a Democrat, and we can manipulate in that. First of all, I would ask that we should have been asked questions. Once we give questions, I believe we should be respected and given answers. The public need to be given answers to the questions that are posed. Now, the next thing, I know this is not going to be very popular for the North Corridor, but I believe we need to have one ward on one side.
Mr. Chairman, I think we lost her.
Yeah, she seems to be frozen. Sometimes you just give it about 30 seconds. I'm trying to be respectful. All right, so what we're gonna do is, she froze at 1 minute 45 seconds. We'll come back to Pastor Cole at the end. Madam Clerk, please make note of that for me. So next up is Kathleen Farr. Kathleen Farr, F-A-R-R-E-L-L.
That's Farrell.
Farrell, thank you, Ms. Farrell. Do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
My name is Kathleen Farrell, and I live in the 2900 block of Compton. And tonight I'm representing the League of Women Voters. Redistricting has a great impact on not only voters, but our democracy in general. And honorable redistricting requires fairness, accuracy, transparency, and maximum public participation. That is why we have watched every meeting of this committee and the Board of Aldermen in this process. Good process makes good policy. This was not good process. There was too little time. The Board of Aldermen needed to work with all parts of the city, even before those census numbers came out, to find out what was important to them: the strength of their neighborhoods, racial and economic diversity, and the next 10 years of development and change. 2, the announced committee process has not been followed, and it is not transparent. The North Central, South Central subcommittees. This was to be where the real work was done. Yet there is no record of those meetings. And yesterday, one member of them said she didn't even know where the boundaries at the street level were, so I don't know what she used in her work. Reports of conversations with alderpersons, critical but not shared. Reports of legal analysis not shared. Will these populations be equalized? What is counting as populations? These are important legal questions. That expertise was not presented. The methodology needed to be disclosed and explained. What data was used? Why? The map is problematic without understanding that, and there was not a clear explanation. Finally, the map itself, it was abysmal. The public cannot engage if they can't read the map. They need to know that the legal questions have been settled before they look at this draft, and it needs to be accessible and have sharp lines. Finally, this has been a very poor public hearing process, okay? We've heard all the comments about the timing. There has been no question and answer, and the public, at least as of this afternoon, cannot even read the written testimony on the portal. Bad process makes bad policy, and it's not surprising to see a flawed map. Here are the reasons why the league believes it's flawed. Number one, neighborhoods are split. That could be debated. Downtown, Southampton, Bevo, and there's growing diversity in Bevo. Major arteries split, common interests. Forest Park Southeast and Midtown? I don't know. And most importantly, neighborhoods impacted by GSA development. Finally, it stifles our city's growing political diversity. The league offers our services to moderate any meeting in the next 6 weeks that requests us. I've noticed on your timeline that you want to vote on at least this first draft, and you have a December 3rd date. With Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell.
Coming up, that's really hard.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. Your time has expired. I appreciate your input.
We'll be watching.
Okay, next up on the list is Marquise Gobin, but he spoke last night and we'll come back to him at the end. Next up is Reverend Charles Norris. Reverend Charles Norris. Reverend Charles Norris.
I think he spoke. I think he's from.
Yes, I'm here. I spoke last night.
You did? Okay, thank you.
Last night. And,
thank you for reminding me.
I don't need to speak again. I just I had signed up late. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I missed that. Next on the list is Nathan Cromwell. Nathan Cromwell.
I believe he spoke last night as well, Chairman.
Okay, we'll come back to him. Michael James Brown.
I'm here.
Mr. Browning, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed, sir.
All right, my name is Michael Browning. I live on the 4400 block of Oakland Avenue in Forest Park Southeast. I believe the ward boundaries should not be drawn by politicians who stand to benefit from them. The fact that this first draft of the map overwhelmingly places the alderpersons who sit on the legislation committee in safe wards while packing perceived political rivals in wards where they would have to run against each other, that itself is an indictment of the process. Did you think no one would notice that you placed 3 progressive alderpeople in the same ward while drawing a new ward without any incumbent just 1 street away? Ward maps have a huge impact on the lives of people that live in this city, and the way you have treated this process makes it seem like you think it's a joke. Under the guise of keeping neighborhoods together, the committee has purposefully divided neighborhoods with common interests in what appears to be an attempt to protect themselves. De Bolivar Place is separated from Skinker de Bolivar, which somehow manages to end up connected to the Central West End. Downtown is separated from Downtown West. Decades ago, my neighborhood, Forest Park Southeast, was cut off from its surroundings by urban renewal projects like Highway 40. We have been working really hard to connect and bridge our community with Botanical to the south of us, the Central West End along Sarah Street, and Kings Oak across Kings Highway. The Forest Park Southeast Neighborhood Association recently voted to include Kings Oak in our boundaries so that we could give a voice to that small but very important community. The proposed boundaries isolate us from all 3 of those surrounding neighborhoods. It is disappointing to see a ward that leaves a neighborhood so cut off. This first map is a political map and includes zero transparency in how it was made. I don't actually think we should see another map from this group, from this committee. With an incredibly short comment period, woefully inadequate public engagement, and the oft-noted lack of transparency, no member of this committee should be involved in the process going forward. There have been many fair and impartial maps that have been proposed by demographers in this community, and a fair and transparent process would be to present multiple maps to the public and explain the process of how things were drawn. So last night you heard from, 19 people in a city of 300,000, and you called it good public engagement. I heard you guys talking about it at the end. Your standards are so low you would have to dig to find them. Do better or don't do it at all. Let an independent commission draw the lines. The people of this city deserve it.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments tonight. Next up is Ms. Ines Bordeaux.
Hi,
Hello,
I'm sorry.
Ms. Bordeaux.
I'm at my second job. Let me find somewhere quiet.
Okay. Ms. Bordeaux, do you?
Okay, I'm ready.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Great. My name is Ines Bordeaux. I am here representing myself. I am the committee woman of the 9th Ward. I watched the meeting last night.
Ms. Bordeaux, can you state your, Ms. Bordeaux, can you please state your 100 block that you live in?
Apologies. I live in the 4200 block of Oregon in the 9th Ward. Let me start by saying you all should not be drawing these maps. It is the job of the people to select their elected officials, not the job of elected officials to select their voters, which is what happens when people who stand to benefit from the drawing of the maps draw the maps themselves. I particularly do not trust this body to draw these maps fairly and accurately. I have a great deal of affection for my own alderperson, Dan Gunther, and I do not want him involved in the drawing of these maps. Furthermore, late last year, maybe early this year, this very body passed a bill to overturn the will of the people and once again put redistricting to a public vote. I bet if we look at the members on this committee and the people who voted to overturn the will of the people, I bet it's a flat circle. And it had to be vetoed by the last mayor. You should not be involved in the drawing of this map. It should be a nonpartisan commission doing that. I'm concerned about the maps being drawn in a way to preserve the power that you all, want to maintain. Case in point, Ballmer, the chair of this committee, is the only one not currently drawn into a district with someone else, other than Representative Lisa Middlebrook, who is at the very edge of the city, so that I understand. Why is it the chair of the committee doesn't have to share a district and fight over that position with someone else? Not to mention the fact that 6, 8, and 15, those wards are all drawn together. As a person who has watched every single Board of Aldermen meeting, every single Public Safety Committee meeting, every single Ways and Means Committee for the last 4 years, and seeing the way politics plays out in the Board of Aldermen, is anyone really surprised that those boards were drawn together? This is the very reason why you all should not be in charge of doing that. The fact that we just got a map on Monday and already the public is expected to have well thought out and processed concerns and comments and testimony a mere 2 days later is incredibly disappointing. Why did this body wait until the 11th hour to try to engage the community? Last year, when y'all were writing legislation to overturn the will of the people, voting and passing legislation that had to be vetoed by the last mayor to again overturn the will of the people, if y'all had been focused on community engagement, then this would be a much better process now. While it is true that you
Thank
did
you,
not
Ms. Bordeaux.
have
Your time has expired. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next on the list is Mr. Dan Pister.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Pister, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed, sir.
Okay, my name is Dan Pister. I reside in the 1000 block of St. Charles, and I'm a board member for the Downtown Neighborhood Association. I've been a city resident, a downtown resident since for probably about 16 years. My concern in the issues currently are with the way the boundaries are drawn up for downtown and the downtown west neighborhoods. Historically, downtown and downtown west have had boundaries that have sliced through the heart of our neighborhoods. This has caused confusion, and it has fragmented both of these neighborhoods, voters, causing us to be politically marginalized. After looking at the map that was published this week, our issues are essentially the same. There's a boundary that goes right down Tucker, and then another boundary that slices right through Washington Avenue. Many who live downtown and in downtown west want to remain together since we have some of the same issues. And we would prefer if our boundaries are not drawn through our entire neighborhoods, or at least keeping our residential population intact and not separating us. So some of the solutions that I would propose are that we keep downtown and downtown west in the same ward. If you do have to break them up, then maybe downtown is in one ward entirely, and downtown west is in another ward entirely. But we wouldn't want a boundary that goes through a major thoroughfare like Washington Avenue. Downtown is one of the largest tax bases in the region. It's the face of the region, and our reputation kind of relies on how downtown proceeds. And we need to make sure that we have our political support here in downtown and downtown west. So I respectfully request that you guys keep downtown and downtown west together. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pister. Appreciate your comments. Next up is Mr. Adam Wright.
I'm here.
Mr. Wright, good evening. Do you promise, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed, sir.
I am here representing myself as a private citizen on the 5400 block of Walsh in the Southampton neighborhood. I am a past president of the Southampton Neighborhood Association, which I feel gives me a unique perspective to the challenges faced by neighborhoods split among several wards. This Zoom meeting of tonight affords me the opportunity to stand at the dividing line of Nottingham that is proposed to run through the Southampton neighborhood. Currently behind me is the dividing line of Macklin, which is the divide between the current 14th and 16th wards. At this location 1 year ago, we had a developer propose to have the zoning of this parcel that I'm standing adjacent to change to allow the construction of a 4-story apartment building. Our neighborhood association was able to stop this from happening by marshaling enough residents together to get the attention of the alderman and say, our neighborhood doesn't support this. However, if we would have been unsuccessful in that, the residents of the current 14th ward, literally across the street, would have had no recourse to their elected official to say, why would you sponsor this legislation? As we often see aldermanic courtesy extended at the Board of Aldermen. I understand that if this boundary that is proposed changes, it really just changes the situation from an east-west side of the street to the north-south. We have run into several challenges where, to garner the support of our aldermen for our neighborhood, we have our volunteers doing 3 times as much work to get 3 times as many people on board. It burns out our volunteers and it weakens our neighborhood. Finally, I'd like to state that as a neighborhood that has been divided for at least the past 10 years among different wards, what we have found is, whether intentional or not, we don't always seem to have the full attention of the aldermen, because we have entire neighborhoods competing for their attention and the limited time and resources. And honestly, sometimes we have felt like second-class residents in that regard. This is a very real effect. I realize that with the hard work and all of the legal process that has to go through for any map, it cannot be avoided to split neighborhoods. However, this neighborhood has borne that burden for quite some time. And I feel it is unfair to ask us to continue to bear that burden when there are alternatives available, such as the one Ms. Gaa proposed on behalf of the Southampton Neighborhood Association earlier during this meeting.
Mr. Wright, thank you so much for your comment. We appreciate it. Next up is Matt Vitale. Mr. Vitale. Mr. Vitale, do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed, sir.
So my name is Matt Vitale. I reside in the 16th Ward, and I am representing myself as a citizen. I've watched last night.
Mr. Vitale, please state the 100 block that you live on, sir.
I live on the 400 block of Clifton Avenue.
You may proceed. Thank you.
So the common theme over the last 2 nights seems to be that citizens are having a difficult time visually interpreting the proposed map that was put out on Monday. And between the lack of usability with the proposed map and the little window of time between the release of the map and these public meetings have made it difficult or impossible to provide input to the committee. Now, I'm not an attorney, but like Alderman Boyd, I like to play one on STL TV. And in accordance with the requirements of Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, the City of St. Louis must not discriminate against individuals with disabilities on the basis of disability in its services, programs, or activities. And several members of the community have stated their inability to interpret the proposed maps visually. Now, the only files that were shared of the proposed maps were visual images. There was no textual descriptions of the ward boundaries or the neighborhoods that reside within these boundaries. And any individual with difficulty or the inability to visually interpret the proposed map are unable to participate in the discussions over the last 2 days. And if requested, perhaps the city may have been able to accommodate citizens within this a little bit over 48-hour period, but given the lack of action on the publicly available files after several complaints, I have my doubts that those requests would have been reasonably accommodated prior to yesterday or tonight's evening. It's clear that public testimony isn't viewed favorably among several members of the Board of Aldermen. When there's low public participation, citizens are cast as disinterested. When 30 residents show up in opposition to a bill, they're cast as stooges or stand-ins. The chairman of this committee hasn't been present at either meeting the last 2 days. I'm sure there is a good reason for the excused absence, but if the chairman of the committee was unable to adjust his schedule accordingly, it should be easy for an alderman with over 20 years of service to understand that everyday citizens might have difficulty participating in a discussion with little notice to adjust their schedules on top of a map that they are unable to interpret. It's also clear that ward reduction isn't favorable among several board members. The result of their unfavorable view has resulted in this lethargic redistricting process where residents are lacking the information necessary to participate in these meetings. Due to several wards being over the population deviation, significant changes will be made to the proposed map after tonight's meeting. If the Board of Aldermen would like to make a serious effort to allow citizens of St. Louis the opportunity to participate in the process, I have 3 recommendations. One would be that public testimony should be allowed after the changes are made to the proposed map before the second reading of this board bill. Number 2 would be that the draft should be made accessible and include a textual description of the ward boundaries and the neighborhoods that lie within the boundaries for all 14 wards. And all future revisions should be published with a textual description of these boundaries. And the accessible future revisions. Am I out of time?
Thank you, Mr. Vitale. That's your time, sir. Thank you. Next up is Brandon Robnett. Mr. Brandon Robnett.
Right, here I am.
Okay, Mr. Robnett, good evening. Mr. Robnett, do you swear off or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth, sir?
I do.
Please proceed.
Okay, my name is Brandon Robnett. I live in the Shaw neighborhood. I'm on the executive committee of that Shaw Neighborhood Improvement Association, but I'm speaking on my own behalf. I live in the 3900 block of Magnolia. And I wanted to speak about how this affects the neighborhoods because you have all the neighborhoods divided. A lot of people have touched on a lot of my issues too, but you have a lot of neighborhoods that are split in half or split in different parts. and the adjacent neighborhoods that work together don't get a chance to work together. And then especially as well, a lot of the aldermen and the people who were making this map said they wanted representation. They didn't want to lose the representation of people of color, of African Americans in the city. But at the same time, only one of these new proposed wards straddles Delmore. You're still divided by that line. And it's like, you don't trust that we can actually represent people, that a Black person can represent somebody south of Delmore, or that a white person can represent someone north of Delmore. And in the State House, we have 4 districts in this city that straddle Delmore, and every one of them is represented by an African American. So they don't seem to have a problem, and that's a Republican drawn map, a map drawn by Republicans who most of them don't even live in St. Louis, and they managed to draw it better than you all. And the accessibility to the public, we've already talked, a lot of people have touched on that. You drew this basically on a garbage can with 2 days notice, and you don't allow people to ask questions. It's a map nobody can really see or read. And at the same time, people don't understand what's going on. And definitely the number one thing, it should not, no one who stands to benefit from this process should have a part in the process. You have people drawing maps who want to benefit themselves and their allies while punishing the other people on the board who disagree with them. And it's not fair to the citizens. We should be allowed to have more than an active participation in this process, and we want to be seen and we need to be heard.
Is that it, Mr. Robnett? Thank you so much for your comments, sir. We appreciate you coming out tonight. Next is Mr. Brian Krueger.
I am here.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Krueger. Do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth, sir?
It is.
Please proceed.
My name is Brian Krueger. I live in St. Louis Place neighborhood in the 2600 block of 21st Street in the fabulous 5th Ward. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. I certainly won't take 3 minutes. I did want to speak to something I heard in last night's thing in the discussion about not getting the word out. In fairness to my alderman here in the 5th, James Page, he was very aggressive on getting the word out. I'm not here to sell him, but he did a nice job in pre-selling this set of circumstances. I'm a simple guy. I'll spare a lot of the political discussion. But as I look at the map, I live in section A, proposed A, and I'm not sure how logistically the arch up to the Chain of Rocks Bridge can be considered common turf. And I'm looking at it from a perspective of streets, curbs, sidewalks, speed bumps, traffic safety. They're two, with all due respect to the elected officials and to the citizens of the area, it's not even, we're not even in the same zone. That was my comment. I'll turn it over to, you've got a lot of people here, but it just, I would ask that perhaps it may be reevaluated. It just seems that's too long a stretch. Maybe at Carrie Taylor, there's something that maybe it could, you know, bleed into C and B and this area, you know, to the south, you know, consolidated with Hyde Park, near Riverfront North, St. Louis Place, Old North, perhaps JVL, the immediate area around the NGA site. But just to look at proposed section A, I just don't understand how logistically anybody can make it work. It just seems unrealistic. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Krueger. We appreciate your input. Next up is Tracy Stevens.
Yes, thank you very much for having us tonight. I do appreciate it.
Okay, Ms. Spees, do
yes.
you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Okay. So, apologies. My name is Tracy Stevens. I'm representing myself today. I live in the 11th ward on the 3600 block of Fillmore Street. And as others have stated, I'm really disappointed in the draft that was created of the map and the scheduling of these hearings on 2 consecutive days following the release of that map. Honestly, the time of the hearing suggests that the Board of Aldermen wants as little public input as possible, and the map itself is impossible to read. One cannot tell where the proposed new ward boundaries are, where the current ward boundaries are, or which neighborhoods are grouped together. In order to ensure that the redistricting process is equitable and inclusive, I am calling on y'all, the Board of Aldermen, to, first of all, recuse yourselves from involvement in drawing this map. I echo the previous commenters' testimony that an independent nonpartisan commission should be drawing new wards, not those who stand to lose or benefit from the outcome, especially the committee chair, Mr. Vollmer. I also ask that you include all St. Louis City residents in the drawing of ward maps and equally distribute the population, including children, not just those who are of voting age, because some of those children, well, there's a lot of reasons, but mainly because some of those children we are excluding will come of age in the next 10 years and be able to vote. Not including children disadvantages Black and brown residents and immigrants who tend to have more children than white residents. And that serves to maintain white supremacy among our elected officials in the Board of Aldermen. I would also call on you to release each version of the map in a downloadable format that includes new wards drawn over the 2020 census tracts, neighborhood boundaries, current wards, and the population for each new ward. As I mentioned earlier, the map that y'all had released on Monday was absolutely unreadable, and we need better from the Board of Aldermen. We know you can do it. We know that you have the capability. You just need to employ the folks who can draw a decent map if you want actual public input. Finally, I would ask you all to provide ample opportunity for feedback from the community by ensuring that there's a public meeting with an in-person option for the presentation of each new map going forward. Part of this is allowing ample time for the public to ponder and evaluate the proposed changes and allowing in-person comment. Not doing so limits engagement to only those with internet access and the equipment and the ability to navigate Zoom. So please, if you are really concerned about public input, hold an in-person option so folks can come especially if they're vaccinated, and provide their comments.
Thank you, Ms. Spees. We really appreciate your time tonight and your input.
Thank you.
Next up is Danielle Spradley. Danielle Spradley.
Vice Chair Boyd, she emailed the clerk saying she did not want to speak tonight.
Okay, we'll move on to Emiliahinckley. Ms. Hinckley.
Yes, hello.
Hello, Ms. Hinckley, good evening. Thank you for your participation. Do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed, ma'am.
My name is Emiliahinckley. I'm a resident of the 3500 block of McKean Avenue in the 15th ward. And I want to first agree with a lot of what folks have said today, that this map is not good. The process has not been good. Nothing about any of what is happening is good enough for the city of St. Louis. And I really want to focus today on just the basics of numbers, which is really the most fundamental part of redistricting. We have a certain number of people in this city. We have 14 wards that we have to split them amongst, and those wards need to be equal, constitutionally speaking, democratically speaking. Those wards need to accurately and fairly split the population that we have in the city. And as we saw in this map, that has not been the case. We have a ward currently proposed that has over 25% additional population than what the number is supposed to be. We have another ward that is 8% less representation than what the numbers are supposed to be. And so clearly, just from the basic standpoint of we have X amount of people and 14 wards, which is basic fractions that sixth graders are taught to do, this map is not up to the standards that we need. These wards need to fairly represent our citizens, one person, one vote, the Constitution. The Supreme Court has upheld this tenet, and yet this map in and of itself does not accurately reflect that. And so I understand that this is a complicated process. I understand neighborhoods and histories and all of that needs to be taken into consideration, but the most basic and easiest thing to get right is how many people should roughly be in each ward. And right now, this map is so egregiously not hitting those numbers. And so whatever the next map looks like, we clearly need a complete reevaluation of those boundaries to accurately reflect each ward having roughly the same number of people. So that way, every member of this city is accurately represented within the Board of Aldermen. And so again, this is not an enviable job. I agree with what everyone said, that the Board of Aldermen should not be doing it in the first place, as they have so many conflicts of interest. But the most basic tenet is the numbers. And so if we can't get that right, it's just all disaster from here. It's all downhill from here. And so there's so many things that need to be changed, but the number one issue is the numbers. And I urge the Board of Aldermen to again recuse themselves because of all the political conflicts of interest folks have already touched upon. But as I assume they will not, to at least just bust out the calculators and do some basic mathematical reasoning to make sure that these wards accurately and fairly represent the folks of this city. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing the next map.
And thank you so much for your participation tonight. Next up is, I'll get this right, Kaveh Razani.
Mr. Chair, you did an admirable job. It's Kaveh Razani.
Thank you. Do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? And by the way, can you provide a little more light on your...
Let me see what I can do for you. I'm gonna have to go stand outside this car in my headlights. How about that?
Wow.
How's this?
Okay, we can see you a little better. Thank you.
No problem. Did you want to swear me in?
Yes. Do you promise, do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Kaveh Razani. I'm a resident of the 2900 block of Minnesota. I'm a property owner and resident there. I'm also a business owner and property owner on the 2800 block of Cherokee and the 3500 block of South Jefferson. And my work has me on the 3700 block of I span the breadth of what is proposed District H. And well, firstly, I'd like to say, I think there were like 15 or 20 speakers before me, and it seems like not a single person has supported this proposed map and the way that it's been drawn. You know, I'd like to talk about how, according to the residential addresses of our proposed or current alder folks and committee folks, that no one that currently serves as alderman in either the 6th, 9th, or 20th ward would be eligible to represent the proposed district that spans all three of those wards. Nor do I believe either of the 9th ward committee folks and at least one of the 20th ward committee folks, and I couldn't speak necessarily to the 6th ward committee folks. But I'm just a little bit astounded, a little shocked and surprised that, first of all, a map that is illegally drawn was submitted for comment 24 hours prior to the first hearing. That seems a bit asinine. And I currently am leaving a work function because I did not have enough notice to plan to be at a hearing where I'm supposed to testify. So I think that I believe one of the earlier speakers said that good process leads to good results, or something to that effect. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I'd love to echo everything that the Ninth Ward Committee woman said about the process being a bit ridiculous and non-representative. I'm going to tell you something. Cherokee doesn't share anything in common with SLU Hospital. We are a district that prides itself on being one of the most multicultural business and residential communities in the city. We're one of the most densely populated parts of the city. And as it stands, no one that understands the culture of our district is eligible to represent us. No one that we've elected to represent us is eligible to do so with the lines the way they're currently drawn. I don't speak for all of Cherokee. I do serve as the vice chair of our Cherokee SID. I've been on that board for 10 years, so I think I know a little something about what we think and what we do on Cherokee Street. I don't see how the way these district lines are drawn serve the communities that are supposed to be represented by a fewer number of elected officials. And we know that that means more clamoring for the same amount of resources. It means less representation for differing values and needs. And I don't see how any of what we have fought so hard for in the 9th and 20th wards over the last 10 years that I've been working on those streets will be upheld or continued with the lines the way they're currently drawn. I also want to say,
Mr. Rosani, we really appreciate your input.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brian Gunderson.
Yeah, I'm here. Can I yield my time to Pastor Cole, or?
No, you cannot give time to anyone. We'll come back to Pastor Cole. Did we lose him?
I'm sorry, I think I moved him over and I meant to move the other speaker over. I'll move him back. My apologies.
Is he back?
No, I'm sorry. Actually, I didn't. I thought maybe I moved him over, but I didn't.
What happened? Did he fall off?
I'm not sure.
Okay, if he logs back on, we'll come back to him.
Okay.
Next up, the only thing I have is Tess, T-E-S-S.
Yes, the last name's Sanders.
Okay, your last name is what again, ma'am?
Sanders, like Bernie.
Sanders. Okay, Miss Sanders, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Yeah, you already know my name is Tess. I live on the 1300 block of St. Charles, and I'm representing myself, living in Ward 5, and own property in Ward 5 as well, where I live. And on a selfish note, I'm pretty grateful to have other people to hear tonight that it's not just me who was completely mystified by the maps. I have the good fortune of having access to a color printer at my work, and I printed them out and looked at them quite a lot. And there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wards that I thought, oh, maybe Downtown West is in one of these. I kind of understand the key a little bit more now, but honestly, it's quite unclear to me where and how the wards are changing, even though I've tried to avail myself to resources and self-educate around it. Perhaps it's just my ignorance in civics, but I also, I would really, I don't know. I think there's a possibility to engage the community in a real way, like in a real way. And I'm grateful for the first take at doing so and having these public hearings available. But to me, especially, I'm thinking about high school students. I'm thinking about the high school students in North City whose schools were, well, disproportionately like slated and have closed since last school year. And there's still a lack of clarity to me, even after President Reed's comment last night, remains a lack of clarity. about how people who are under 18 are included in this, and when and if they got to consult, and even honestly, who's included in any of these numbers, and like the free floating letters that say -8%, for example, in the Ville, which is where Sumner High School is. Yeah, like what does that mean? And so I think I'm reiterating a lot of what's been said. Please, more clarity about who has been included, especially where I live. A lot of my neighbors live in tent cities or they're transient. And if they had any interest in being included in this, there would need to be just way more public outreach, like meaningful actually bodies in a space, which has already been mentioned, to bring people together. So that's my piece. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Appreciate you coming out. Next up is Michaela Allen, maybe?
Yep.
Michaela Allen?
Michaela.
Ms. Allen, thank you. Do you swear or affirm that your testimony will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please proceed, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Michaela Allen. I live on the 4700 block of Alaska, and I live in Dutchtown. I understand that the maps that are passed out of this committee and Board of Aldermen are the maps that will shape our city for the next decade. I also understand that this committee has done next to nothing to ensure the residents of our city are aware of the impact of that, or even really that it's happening. First, the Board of Aldermen has known ward reduction is coming for literal years. They've had ample time to educate the public on what a massive transformational shift this will be for the city and to involve the community. And you all just kind of said, no, I think we won't. I understand the delayed release of the census data impacts the legislative timeline, but that doesn't mean that there couldn't be public education or community outreach prior to that. There could have been door-to-door canvassing, direct engagement between alders and neighborhood associations, town halls for the entire year leading up to this. Next, the map was released 2 days ago. We're not being provided with enough time to prepare any meaningful feedback and truly participate in this process. Extremely limited community outreach has been done. Members of this committee are relying on Nextdoor, an app that is notoriously racist, by the way, to suffice as community outreach that over 2/3 of the city don't even have access to. So I'm concerned because this process has not been community-centered, it has not been transparent, and this committee has continually pumped up their heads to believe that that's what they're doing. One of the most concerning things to me is that the map is not accessible. Transparency is the new buzzword, but the lines are thick, the streets are unreadable, and it's only available online. Multiple people have said this tonight. I stay on Twitter, and I can tell you that if you search BB 101 or STL redistricting and scroll down the timeline, you will see civically engaged city residents. You will see civically engaged residents of the city doing your job for you. I saw someone create a Google map out of your proposed map that showed the boundary lines, streets, highways, parks, restaurants, landmarks. All of that could be seen. You can zoom in and out of it easily. This committee should follow that model and put forth a downloadable, easily readable and accessible version of the map that includes the 2020 census tracts, neighborhood boundaries, current wards, and the population for each new ward. The committee should also be intentional about getting this information to folks who are not on social media. Every alderperson should be holding a town hall right now. There should be a sign on my block that says that this is happening, a copy of the map on every door of the city if you have to. Lastly, I watched the meeting last night, and I just have to say that it is your job to meet people where you are. You have to go where they are. I know this because I'm also a community organizer. So when only 5 people show up to your event, you don't look around and say you're disappointed. You all don't just say you don't care. You say, I should have done more turnout calls. Let's try flyering the neighborhood. Who can we partner with to get the word out about the next one? So that to me was pretty insulting. And I think that you owe the city residents who are here and who could have been here this week had they been given the ample time and opportunity to engage and apology. Thank you.
Ms. Allen, thank you for your comments. Appreciate your participation. Next up is Jesse Neville.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Neville. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth, sir?
Yes, I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. My name is Jesse Neville. I'm a resident on the south side of St. Louis on the 2500 block of Gravois Ave. And I am completely opposed to the ward reduction map that was put forward by the legislation committee. And living in this deeply divided city of St. Louis, I have learned from the Black community organizers and leaders of the Keep 28 campaign that despite the fact that a public comment has been offered now so late in the game, the ward reduction scheme has been a completely undemocratic process up to now. The plan to reduce the wards was based on a sham election that relied on support from white voters and made no effort to inform or mobilize the Black voting population. It was a deliberate and cynical strategy to hold a majority white election in a majority Black city on an issue that would ultimately impact the Black community most of all by redrawing and yes, by gerrymandering the borders to liquidate the Black vote and advance the interests of white real estate developers and speculators, and it worked. It was a crooked deal from day one, and when the board was pressured by their constituents to schedule a revote, the former mayor vetoed that. That is not what a democratic process looks like. A true democratic process was expressed through the Black community-led campaign to keep 28 wards, to demand that the wards remain intact. And that is the position I am supporting. One that Black community organizers and leaders of this campaign, led by the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, have taught me. It is from those leaders that I have come to understand the ward reduction as part of the city government of St. Louis's long-standing agenda to push out the Black community, facilitate gentrification and one-sided development for white business interests. An example being the NGA spy agency that was put right into the Black community to create jobs for white people. This is a negative public policy that fails to bring any kind of genuine economic development and instead floods the North Side with killer police. Meanwhile, right across the Del Mar Divide, you find mansions in tree-lined neighborhoods enjoyed by us white people. The ward reduction not only does nothing to change this reality, it was put in place to make it even worse. What is being called for is a public policy of economic development and reparations to the Black community on the North Side. That is the only way to truly end the brutal and notorious Del Mar Divide. So as a voter, as a resident of South St. Louis, I oppose and reject this ward reduction scam, and I will do whatever I can to organize fellow Southside residents to support the Black community-led campaign to keep 28 and fight for genuine democracy and self-determination. Thank you.
Can't hear you. You muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you. First of all, again, thank you, Mr. Neville, for your comments and coming out tonight. Next up is Jazia Jaden Meyerstrom.
Yeah, present. It's Jazia.
Okay. Mr. Meyerstrom, do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please proceed, sir.
So my name is Jazia Meyerstrom. I live on the 4900 block of Kemper Avenue, which I believe is in the 10th ward. And I am representing myself today. Oh, I'll keep that light on. So first, I just want to say that I'm really disappointed in the committee, as a lot of other people said it, how little interaction there's been with the public about this process. For example, you might say I'm in my car, and this is because I could not figure out where this meeting was supposed to be. So I just went to City Hall to try to see if it was there, figure out where it was. The security guards at City Hall didn't even know what I was talking about and could point me towards no resources on how to even get to this meeting. Not to mention the fact that I had to take off from work to be here today because I found out about it last minute, and it's at 6 p.m., which is when a lot of people, a lot of working class people are working. So I really just wish this process could be brought out of the dark, because I really do think it's being kept in the dark on purpose to, like, as other people have said, protect the aldermen who are drawing these maps. And I would like to echo the thoughts of others that the Board of Aldermen should not be drawing their own maps because there is lots of conflicts of interest. I would also like to echo the fact that I think that all SPL residents should be accounted for, not just those of voting age. The new wards need to be drawn equally to distribute the population. And there needs to be ample time for community feedback and a public meeting for each map going forward, because this map is not going to be acceptable. And I can say that I understand what the board is thinking, because there will be on the street action and backlash if this racist and unjust, undemocratic map goes through. There will be action on the street, and it's going to waste police resources, which are the city's resources, which could be going towards things such as housing insecurity and other social problems that are deeply hurting the city. So I just see this whole keeping in the dark, then we're going to have to protest, then there are going to be these reactions. It is just a waste of time and energy when we could be working together to make the city a better place. Because I'm going to school right now. I'm a business student at Webster University, and I'm concerned about my future as an entrepreneur in this city if the people who are in charge of crafting what is essentially the business environment are being so corrupt and undemocratic. So I just would like the committee to be a lot more transparent and more iterations of this map going forward. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments, Mr. Meyerstrom. Next up is Travis Crum.
Hello.
Mr. Crum, thank you for joining us. Do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed, sir.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Travis Crum. I'm an associate professor of law at Washington University in St. Louis. I'm representing myself here tonight, and I live in U City. So I want to make
can you give us the 100 block that you live on, sir?
Sure, 300 Melville.
Thank you.
So 2 points I want to make. First concerns the one person, one vote issue. I understand that this was a draft map. People have mentioned that, you know, it's only a starting point, but I've never seen a draft map that failed to comply with one person, one vote. The Supreme Court gives cities and states pretty wide leeway to have a total population deviation of 10%. The proposed map deviates by 34% on a total population baseline. And given the overpopulation of wards L and wards M, the map that is going to come out of this process is going to look very different than this draft map. And so I think given the equal population problems with the draft map, in many ways, a lot of our times are being wasted because the next round of the map are going to have to look very different. And people who have been proposing things tonight are going to have to propose things on a different map. The second thing I want to talk about is to flag something for this panel that I view as a significant litigation risk. And I do this as an ally, as someone who writes about empowering Black voters and protecting the Voting Rights Act. But unfortunately, the conservatives on the Supreme Court have created a doctrine that throws up barriers to African-American political power. And those cases are known as Shaw versus Reno and Miller versus Johnson. And in those cases, the court said that if race predominates during the redistricting process, you need to have a compelling governmental interest for drawing a majority minority district, and that district needs to be narrowly tailored to that interest. And so comments about attempting to racially balance the ward to be 7 Black, 7 white older persons creates a litigation risk. And so one way to kind of get out of that litigation risk is to ensure that this panel is doing its homework to make sure that these districts are required by the Voting Rights Act. And so what type of homework does it need to do? Well, it needs to show that these districts are compact districts where minority voters are 50% plus 1 in those areas, i.e. there's residential segregation. And I think in many of these districts across the city, that is not a hard showing to make, but it's important to lay a groundwork for that. The second thing that needs to be shown is that there's racially polarized voting, that Black and white voters prefer different candidates. And so once that inquiry is taken into account, I think the districts or looking at race during the redistricting process is proper. But I think the process of trying to essentially eyeball this and say we want to achieve parity without doing any of that groundwork risks precious taxpayer resources being spent on litigation. And that's something that I hope we can all avoid. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mr. Kramer, I think I missed the 100 block you live on. Can you give me that 100 block again, please?
Yeah, 300 Melville.
Melville, M-E-A. Is that in the city of St. Louis?
No, I said at the beginning that I live in U City.
Okay, I missed that. That's why I'm asking. Thank you. Appreciate you coming out and providing feedback tonight.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Next on the list is Yolanda Bradley. It's Yolanda Brady, I'm sorry, Brady. Yolanda Brady, B-R-A-D-Y. Yolanda Brady. Okay, maybe we can come back. We need to go back to the top of the list. I did see Mr. Elbert Walton on. So next up is Mr. Elbert Walton. Mr. Walton, I see you, but you're on mute and I don't see your visual. Mr. Walton.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, we see you and we hear you. Mr. Walton, do you affirm or swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? Let's see, frozen. Okay, looks like Mr. Walton might be frozen. Well, I'm gonna give him a little bit of time. Madam Clerk, did we get Pastor Cole back?
Yes, I believe she was just on. Oh, yeah, she's on. And
okay,
also,
I'm gonna, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. We also have Mr. Jake Lionfields, whenever we can put him at the end of the list. He was, he sent an email earlier and we inadvertently missed him. Okay. So I'm sending you a text message.
Okay. Pastor Cole, can we bring Pastor Cole back?
Yes.
Hello, Pastor Cole. You've already been sworn in. We lost you. You're about at 1 minute 45, but I'm not sure if everybody retained what you said. It's been a while ago. So I'm going to give you a fresh 3 minutes. Is that okay?
Oh, that's so kind of you, sir.
All right, let's go.
All right, then. Well, I'm not going to repeat the first part, but I will say that I was listening last night and I heard a young lady says, judge me by my character. And my main thing is I want an alderman that can have character and stop selling the community off for a grant. The other thing which I asked about was the questioning is like we was being chastised as children. You know, you can't ask no question, let me speak to you. But so I'm praying that when this come out, that you guys will give us the answers to some of the questions that was given during this presentation and last night presentation. The next thing I was wondering if, did anybody get in touch with the Federation of Block Units to involve them in this process? Did they choose, or did you choose to invite them? The next thing is the one thing I said before, to make one ward in the North Corridor and the other one in the South Corridor to promote diversity and operate as a city and stop and buying into the growth of all. One thing, the other thing I was wondering is, like the Ferguson Commission met over several weeks and broke down barriers and produced an item that we are currently working on with now. As we continue to walk into separating the different wards, I hope you take in consideration about police protection and how they are breaking down their division and how is that going to affect us. The other thing is, and I hope that we have support for social services, resources, police protection, technology, and education, and parks. I hope we're not being sold out for tax credits no longer. My main thing also is taxation without representation. We need to have representation in anything we do. I appreciate each and every one that worked hard to put this little thing together, but we need help.
Thank you, Pastor Cole. We appreciate you coming out tonight and participating.
Thank you, sir.
Let's see here. Madam Clerk, you mentioned someone else's name that got the email late or something like that.
Yes, sir. His name is Jake Lionfields.
Is he on?
He is.
Yes, I'm on, Mr. Boyd.
Okay. Looking for you. Where are you? Up front. Oh, there you go. Right there. Okay, Mr. Lionfields. Good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do so swear.
Please proceed, sir.
Yeah, I'm on the 3500 block of California in what is currently the 20th ward, and I'm here representing myself. Also off the top, I just want to highlight the importance of not presuming gender identities. I know for a fact that one person has been misgendered by the chair tonight. I won't say who they are just to prevent from outing them, but I think it's really important that we don't assume someone's pronouns and instead find gender neutral ways of referring to constituents. My pronouns are he, him, his. To that end, I won't repeat a lot of the frustrations expressed by a lot of constituents this evening, although I think I agree with the vast majority of them. The map isn't legible. There was a significant lack of public engagement, and frankly speaking, it's untenable to have wards drawn that have significantly different populations. Everyone here knows that's true. I think it's also fair to say that everyone here knows that only really politically engaged and well-connected people know about the map and have known about these meetings. Even if an elder person did their damnedest to make sure that everyone was aware of an opportunity to speak, we've had a few days. So the process is flawed and the map is flawed. But the larger implication is that in having a flawed process for voter engagement and constituent engagement, and having a flawed map, and having to have dozens of constituents show up and talk about those realities, all of that takes up all the oxygen in the room. And consequently, we aren't able to have honest, thoughtful, and deliberate dialogue about how we can produce a map that best promotes racial equity. And that's what I'm most interested in. Because representation is absolutely important, and making sure that we're giving Black residents the ability to elect their fellow constituents to represent them, that's incredibly important. But conversations about how a map is or is not a racially equitable one goes beyond just representation. It's also about access to resources. It's also about historical context. It's also about how drawing neighborhoods together or cutting them up invests or disinvests in people. So we've squandered an opportunity to have a really thorough public debate about how to produce a map that is racially equitable. And I think that that's tragic. So I really urge the Legislation Committee, Chairman Vollmer, and President Reed to do right by the people of the city of St. Louis and restart this process and produce a map that does its best to create a more racially equitable future for the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Let's see here. Mr. Walton, do we have Mr. Walton back?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, sir. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My computer kept messing up.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth and nothing but the truth, sir?
Yes, I shall.
Please proceed.
I'm representing a group called Unity St. Louis, and I previously sent the committee a working paper, and I just wanted to make a comment about the plan that I just saw. This is a follow-up to that plan, that commentary. I looked at the plan and I looked at the statistics that you all had, and then I analyzed it on the basis of the recent Missouri Constitution provision, Article 3, Section 3, that set forth the guidelines for reapportioning legislative districts. And I think that the Board of Aldermen should comply with those 5 guidelines contained in that constitutional provision, because I think that's what the court will look at. So the first thing I looked at was the deviation from the target. The US Supreme Court allows a 10% deviation. The Missouri Constitution allows a 3% deviation. You have deviations as high as 25% and as low as 9% over the target, which is a 34-point deviation. So that map is going to be thrown out by a court with that deviation. The second thing, criteria in the state constitution is the Voting Rights Act. I looked at your map. You have not maximized the number of Black districts or wards. You can get a clear 50% majority and above in 7 wards and substantial Black populations in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wards. The map that I sent you clearly exceeds the Black population in the wards from the draft that the legislative committee has. So I think your map will be thrown out by the court based on the Voting Rights Act as well. The third thing in the Missouri Constitution is called compact and contiguous. And that, of course, is visually. They say it should either be a square, a rectangle, or a hexagon. You have a lot of L-shaped and elongated wards that certainly aren't compact. The fourth criteria is communities with interest. I think that's a way down in the thing. And the fifth is partisan fairness. St. Louis is a Democratic city, so you're not going to have to worry about that. Plus, no court has ever thrown a map out based on partisan gerrymandering. So I think that your map fails to comply with the Missouri Constitution and the federal Constitution, and you all need to make sure that your map complies with those 5 criteria set forth in Article 3, Section 3 of the Missouri Constitution, and failing to do so, the map's going to be thrown out by the courts.
Mr. Walton, thank you so much for your participation tonight and your insight. Next up is Mr. Marquise Govin, or Gavin. Please correct me. Mr. Gavin. Okay, Madam Clerk, I believe I have exhausted the list of everyone who has signed up to speak. Would you be in agreement with that?
Chairman, we're trying to get you lined up. Brady on. I received a check. Oh, just a second. She's raising her hand. So let me. Oh, but I think she called in as a listener. I'm sorry, on the phone. So.
Well, you have to show your face.
And so he has to attack.
Yeah, I think she's on as a call-in listener.
Okay, only people can testify, people that have video.
Okay. Yes, sir. I will send her a check if I can.
Okay.
But other than that, yes, sir. I think everyone had the opportunity to speak.
Okay. So that will close the public comment section for tonight. I will go around and take some final comments and thoughts from committee members. And we'll start with Alderwoman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. First, I'd like to thank all of those who took time to bring us comments of interest and concern. We did hear some very good suggestions. And as everyone knows, this is simply the first draft. It's not anything that we're going to put out as the and vote on. I am very impressed by many of the residents who are taking this seriously because we do need their input. We do need them to stay vigilant. And so I'm looking forward to the continued process and most especially answering those questions online, and also putting some very specific answers for clarity out to the public. There has been some misinformation, so I think that we should all clear things up. And again, thank everyone for their participation. That's all, sir.
Thank you. Alderman Vaccaro.
Since mine would be more comments than anything, I'll just thank everybody for showing up. You know, I heard a lot of different things, and I agree with some, maybe not all. You know, I will say the racial diversity thing hits a strong note with me. Myself and Alderman Muhammad tried hard to keep it at 28 wards so that this wouldn't happen. And I'm not gonna say who or what, but you can look at who voted and how they voted. You know, we felt all along in order to assure racial diversity that the wards needed to stay the way they were. Now we're gonna pay way more money, and I mean way more money, and have way less representation. And yes, this will affect diversity and the way it wouldn't have. And again, you can see who blocked going back to staying at 28 wards. You know, it was not any of the caucus members, which are the majority Black members. Myself, you know, and again, I can go on forever. And what a lot of people were saying, oh, we need the diversity. But then it was a lot of people that went out there and said, well, we want to be progressive and go to less aldermen. And then they say, well, wait a minute. The wards up north don't have the population. And yet, you know, you had some people saying it should be done by voters, some people by population. Either way, a lot of people have left North St. Louis, you know, and this could have all been avoided had the alderman from the 21st Ward, my good friend, John Muhammad, Alderman John Muhammad, and myself, anyone would have listened instead of saying, oh, you're trying to protect your own little fiefdoms. No, there is not one alderman in this group that either I get along with, maybe don't get along with. The one thing I can tell you, there's 28 people that work extremely hard for their neighborhoods to make sure that your neighborhoods are run efficiently and in the best way. The aldermen are now, they are your easiest person to get a hold of. I heard people complaining, we shouldn't have to call our aldermen to get work done. Well, you won't have to worry about that. The wards are going to be so big, getting a hold of your alderman is going to be tough. And then a full-time staff, well, I guess you can talk to their staff. You know, we preach this. For those that said we should have started this process long before, when we didn't know what the population of the city is going to be, that we just recently learned, or were we supposed to guess at how many people left in what areas? Some areas stayed about the same, some stayed stable, some areas left. A lot of people left some areas. So were we supposed to draw a map and say, take our best guess? We had to wait. We just got those numbers. Other municipalities are just now drawing their maps. I heard complaints that the county's not being as open as they could be. I see I got 30 seconds. You know, so I have a lot of issues with this. You know, I've done something as simple as try to turn a street one way, and best thing to do is bring a bunch of neighbors in, and literally pushing, shoving, and fist fights started over, well, if you're going to turn this street this way, wait a minute, that affects my street. No, you got to turn that way. No, we finally ended up, and you can look it up, the Let Ivanhoe Flow campaign, that we said, okay, we're just going to leave it open. It was a giant traffic jam while they were tying down a bridge. So yes, I think it's good to get a lot of input. Ultimately, it's going to be the 28 aldermen that are going to have to put this together and do it in the best way that we see possible. And
thank you, Alderman Cairo.
Okay.
We all appreciate you tonight.
Okay.
Alderwoman Pam Boyd.
I kind of lost track there for a minute.
Any final thoughts as we wrap up the public comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do. And so I just want to thank all the people that did get on and speak tonight. And I thank you people for their comments. And I applaud you because you stepped up to the plate and made your voices heard.
Okay. Alderman Muhammad.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to commend all of the public that commented on tonight's ward redistricting map. And I do want to stress the importance that this is only a draft. This is not the final copy. And I must say, Mr. Chairman, again, I said this last night, we did not receive the census data until the last week of September of this year. And by law, we cannot start to redraw our maps or our wards without that census data. So I want to commend the president and Chairman Vollmer and yourself, Mr. Vice Chairman, for moving so quickly to make sure that we get public comment and public input on this process. I've heard a lot tonight, and honestly, I'm disappointed because a lot of tonight's comments was misinformation and blatant lies about our process and our map. And I just wish that the public will continue to be engaged, continue to be involved in this important process, as this is the first time that this has happened in the last 100 years in our city's history. But I do believe that we are moving in the right direction. And again, I commend every person that gave public testimony today. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and I thank all the members of this committee that has given up their time to focus on this most important issue. Thank you very much. And thank my friend for the 23rd, Alderman Vaccaro. I love him very much. That's my buddy.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything other. I do want to thank the public. I think there were some really good statements made this evening, and you know, I appreciate that comment and that we allowed this forum. I think those are messages and statements and questions, as well as a handful of some accusations that I think we can take down and address. And that's something I think we all take as public officials very seriously, is to address those statements, misstatements, and you know, come back with the facts, so there aren't wild accusations that to which I think a few were thrown out this evening. But it's important to listen to the public, wild accusations and all. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderwoman Martin.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the public, and I want to also thank the staff and STL TV for always being there with us and hanging in. You know, I understand this is a huge change for the city, but I also think we can look at this as a real opportunity to make changes that will benefit our neighborhoods and support our departments. And I think we need to focus on that this is a real opportunity. Thank you. And thanks again to all the residents who came out and took the time to share their comments and suggestions.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am grateful for everyone who shared their comments tonight and last night, as well as online. And I'm sure a lot of us are getting emails, and I mean, I get stopped in the street too. So appreciate everybody and all of your feedback, however you can get it to us. And I hear a lot of the frustrations. As one of a handful of aldermen who have been pushing for years to start preparing for this conversation, I hear your frustration. You know, time is short, so we've got to make the most of the time that we have. And so I think the more that people can continue to get in touch with us about, you know, whether it's neighborhood boundaries, it doesn't just have to be neighborhoods. I mean, it could be looking at, you know, what other places of cultural and historic significance are there in your community that you want to make sure are connected. You know, that's the feedback that we need to have. We do know there are going to be a lot of neighborhoods all pushed together in some form or fashion. So the more we know about who's already collaborating, that is really helpful. I think something else that we haven't talked too much about that I just think would be helpful to have feedback on too are when we do have to do these lines going down alleys versus the middle of streets. So I think that's something else that we need to be considering when we do this too. So please continue to send over your feedback, and thank you very much for all your time tonight, everyone.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the public for coming out and giving their comments, and thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee and the public, of course. First, I'm going to echo all my colleagues and everything they said with thanking everybody for coming out again this evening to speak. I just have a couple of things. I always take notes while people are speaking. A couple of things that were said that I just were alarming is that we had safe wards, and we want wards with common interests. And for me, that's kind of the opposite. I think that this is the opportunity for us to bridge wards that have already seen vested development, interest, engagement with wards that have not, so that they can grow. For example, like the 26th ward, I'm glad connectivity and collaboration were brought up, because a lot of us have been working hard to do just that. And it bridges over lines, it bridges over neighborhood lines, and it bridges over areas, you know, that people try to hold on. I sometimes feel that people try to hold on to, and I know it's different from side to side. So I'm just saying, I'm actually speaking on behalf right now of the countless texts I got just during this meeting, and the emails and the calls that I got all day from my constituents, to making sure that even though they couldn't be on this meeting this evening, that their voices would be heard. So, you know, I kind of looked at this tonight, and I told them, you know, I'm always a little more optimistic than some, but I looked at it like, I compared it to like a music party, like a listening party for music. And when you play your record, your first album, you want to know what people think about it. We know people don't like this one, okay? But that don't mean we're not going to get back. We're going back to the studio, and we're going to get together. But there do have to be eyes and ears at that table. And so if you feel like your eyes and your ears aren't at that table, I'm sorry. I want to make sure you don't feel that way. And I think all of my colleagues feel the same way. I mean, for me, it's not, for us and for me, I think it's not about keeping anyone in place. It's about making sure that we have a place in this as we move our city forward. So again, everybody is open to their comments, to their alder people. If you don't know who your alder person is, look it up. The call up here and we'll help you, but this process does have to move. Our city does have to move forward, and it can't be held back, especially not with misinformation and people being obstructionism and you know, people confusing people. So with that, I just want to thank everyone again, and we're always holding us accountable and being for us for being accessible. And thank you, Mr. Chair, STLTV, and shout out to Sharita Rogers, our clerk, who got all the love on Twitter tonight. You deserve it.
Yeah, so our quick announcement in committee discussions on the agenda, over 207 written comments. This is basically as of about 5 o'clock today. Over 207 written comments have been collected so far. Most of the written comments are on the Google Drive for this meeting. Comments are still coming in. Those will also be uploaded on the Google Drive for members to read as they continue to come in. I'd also like to say that this is definitely a difficult process. For some members of the Board of Aldermen, it's probably painful or will be painful. I've heard comments about certain people being safe or districts drawn a certain way. Let's all understand this. Nobody is safe. Nobody is guaranteed to be elected, because no one is going to be re-elected to a ward when this is over with. Everyone will be elected to a new ward at the end of the day. And the city is growing, and in a healthy way as far as participation from our constituents. More young people are getting involved in the political process. So it doesn't matter who falls in with who. No one is guaranteed to be elected in 2023. But I will say this, the worst case scenario would be we have 14 brand new aldermen. That would be disastrous. And the reason that would be disastrous is because We need a legislative body that have some experience, some institutional knowledge that can really help and mentor new legislators that come on board. Starting over fresh with lobbyists and different interest groups, I don't see how that can be healthy for the city of St. Louis. So to me, and this is just Jeffrey Boyd commentary, the worst case scenario is we have 14 brand new people at the Board of Aldermen that don't really truly understand how the legislative process works. So again, there's no one safe. It's almost like starting over with a brand new city. But St. Louis has a rich history of a lot of issues. And we've been working hard collectively, the 28 aldermen, since I've been here over the past several years, to try to bridge racial divides, to try to bridge the racial gaps, to try to bridge the ageism, the sexism. And I think we've had a lot of progress. Now, are we perfect? Absolutely not. Every bill that we pass at the Board of Aldermen is an imperfect bill, but we can always move toward making it better. Just like this first map, I enjoyed all the comments, whether you were hostile or constructive, because at the end of the day, it's going to make this map a lot better. I am so excited about the fact that this is the first time we've had actual open dialogue with the public. People talk about transparency because it's a very sexy term. It's a very trendy term. But when you really think about it, ask yourself, what does transparency mean to you? What does it mean to you? Because what it means to you is not always the same as what it means to somebody else. So I know I'm committed to this process. Every member of this legislative committee is committed to this process to draw a map that is fair, that is equitable, that will best represent the citizens of St. Louis. Listening to people want neighborhoods intact. All the issues that people brought up is going to be taken into consideration. But again, please remember, this will not be a perfect map. There will be some people that are going to be uncomfortable with how this map is drawn. Members of the Board of Aldermen, people who were split down a street or an alley, there's no way that we can satisfy everybody in the city of St. Louis, every member of this Board of Aldermen, and create a map that fits the whole matrix for making this a great city. It's almost like starting over from scratch in a way, but I'm excited about it. I want to keep the dialogue going. I want to encourage the public to continue to send in emails to the Board of Aldermen. Send them to BOA-CLERK, BOA clerk at stlouis-mo.gov. Send them to your current alderperson. We will forward them on. We will take it into consideration. Again, I want to thank the public for their input. This is very enlightening. It's going to be very challenging, but we're going to get through it together. So that, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to adjourn the legislation committee for tonight. Good night, everybody.